we would like to welcome you all to the panel titled A New Era in Turkey's War on Terror, the Future of PKK, YPG and PJAK, organized by the Center of Middle Eastern Studies, ORSAM. We'd like to thank you for your cordial presence here today with us. And this topic used to be within the territories, within the relations of Turkey and Iraq. However, now Kandil has also, Sinjar dimension has also been added with the addition of the Syrian geography as well, so it has expanded. So Turkey's struggle against combat against terrorism, the scope, the geographical scope has expanded, and the decision makers also probably also noticed this, and by means of even including Iran, they have seen the emergence of risks also within the war between Syria and clashes in Syria as well. And Turkey's combat against Turkey has also foreseen and has also seen the emergence of other geographies as well, just as some other actors, foreign other actors' involvement has made it into a more complicated situation. And the title of our panel is chosen as A New Era in our Turkey's. But what do we mean by new era? After the statement by Mr. Bahçeli, the leader of MHP, a political party here in Turkey, a new era has been launched. Certainly there are the security dimension, and certainly we'll be focusing on more so on the security and regional aspect of the, and in this era. So topics are waiting us what roadmap, and more importantly, what kind of a response from PKK will be there in response to the call made by the leader of the de facto leader of PKK, Abdullah Öcalan. What kind of a response will be there? These will be the focus of our discussions here. But just as I've mentioned, as we have started, and there's the regional aspect of it, the Syrian aspect is certainly important, and it's very significant part of it, and Iran's approach, the Islamic Republic of Iran's approach will be including, maybe will pave the way for the non-regional actors' involvement as well. But today will be more so on how Turkey's war on terror will foresee what kind of steps will be there and what kind of responses will be there, and what kind of pull effect will create perhaps Center for Middle Eastern Studies, and he himself has seen the issue on the very field, and he's part of the army as well, and also after he has retired after army, and he has continued working on his academic studies. And there's also a book titled Kurdish Individuals in Syria, Syrian Kurds is the title of the book he has written, and certainly it will be discussed in academic aspect, so there is an academic contribution by himself. And the other speakers, if we may directly start with you, sir, Mr. Ibrahim Aydın, ORSAM Executive Director. Our combat against and our war on terror, what is the strategy of Turkey? What kind of responses can we expect from PKK, and after the call made by the leader Abdullah Öcalan, what kind of responses are we expecting? Please, if we may start with you, and if I may remind all our speakers that we will have 15 minutes each. Our participants, if we may kindly remind you to keep your first responses down to 15 minutes, then this will be followed by Q&A session. Thank you so much for giving me the floor. Participants, I'd like to also cordially greet you all. Certainly, Turkey's combat against terrorism, all this following the new era the methodology by Türkiye will be also shaped by the attitude by PKK, because up until so far, there's certainly a concept that has been that has been continuing for many years and this has been uninterruptedly continuing along with our neighbors. But once we speak of era, following the new era, what kind of a panorama we will be seeing? This will also heavily depend on the attitude by the PKK. And if you may allow me, this armed struggle, those groups that have opted for armed struggle and qualifications and their features, I'd like to start with their characteristics, because today there is the laying down of the arms and disarmament of the terrorist organization, and its dissolving of itself is there. Dissolution is there. Why would they choose this opt? And why would they lay down their arms and dissolve themselves? So maybe we should first start by means of trying and with an effort to clarify this. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may remind you of the fact that the terrorist organization also are emerging. They may also, just as the microorganisms, they are given birth, they lead on their life, and then they collapse. And then the neutralization is a part of process, what corresponds to the laying down of the arms, disarmament. So, and this comes to an end, and then this is followed by the dissolution, and there are statements made, and the organization dissolved itself to follow a new formation. Therefore, PKK terrorist organization from the viewpoint of the PKK, so this neutralization and laying down of the arms, and this will be followed by dissolution, disband. It will disband itself. And the organization, up until today, how did it survive for such a long time? Let's try to answer this question. Or maybe allow me to go back to why would they give up, or why would they opt for laying down their arm? Either there is a wind of change within itself, or there is a change in the political or social atmosphere, which would then encourage this, because PKK organizations are defined as opportunists, and therefore in their own atmosphere, if there are certain changes, if there has happened certain changes to which the PKK organization will respond to, and they will also go for and opt for some changes in their tactics. Having said this, then, now the third point is, up until so far, how they have survived. That's the question. That solely is related with the motivation. This ideological motivation organization, or the ethnicity or ethnic or religious motivations will last long. They will survive for long years. This is how it is defined in the literature, because behind it is public support, and these religious sacred values also survive for long time. So that's dominating of a dominating effect. That's why they have survived for a long time. However, it's understood that currently it has reached to a point where it is ready to dissolve itself. And allow me to also refer again to the literature. The question as to how do they dissolve? How do they, metaphorically speaking, how do they dismantle themselves? How do they neutralize themselves? And there are 5 parameters for which, or rather, I'd like to mention about 5 types of dissolution. The first one is the mostly seen one, at the percentage of 40% of being enabling political participation among, in line with the research made focusing on 500 terrorist organizations. The research reveals that the motive behind dissolution is their will to be more part of the political solution, and the other part is military responses. So the militants are deactivated and neutralized, and the second reason is the military. So that's at a percentage of 80%. That's at the percentage of 83. And other than these two reasons, certainly there are other reasons of succeeding as well. The success percent is seen for the narrow, not for the social revolution seeking terrorist organization, but those terrorist organizations with a much more narrow ambition, then they may have a success rate of 10%. And they may, when we say success, we mean that they dissolve also. They opt for the dissolution for the 10%. And the other one is the military solution can be also effective in leading them to the dissolution, and that's 7%. And we have, this is an organization type in the rural area. That's why it's not with the police force, but certainly we have received a lot of contribution from the Turkish police, but taken into consideration the field of activity, militants and their armed struggle, and has been active in the rural areas. That's why the military motive of 7% corresponds to our situation of the rural geographical area where the terrorist organizations' activities have been seen most active. So having mentioned about all these literature-based data, now in the last point, we're speaking about terrorist activities that has been continuing of 47 years, and the leader of whom has been continuing 26 years of imprisonment. So, taken into consideration, do you think could this be? We need to really discuss about the motive behind this, and could the leader have such an influence in the entirety of the PKK? Or what about the components or the subcomponents of PKK? There is also an idea on being voiced that the PKK may or may not heed, may not listen to the directions given by the PKK leader Abdullah Öcalan. Öcalan is the founder leader, and he has been undoubtedly the only leader in the last 47 years, and he's physically and out of the 47 years, he's been in solitary confinement for about 26 years, and there has never been a second leader other than himself. And we've never seen another possibility other than himself being the leader. That's why, as the founder of the leader and the philosophy determinant leader, he has formed the philosophy and the method of struggle. All these were determined by leader. And those of you who might be following this closely will know throughout this 47 year, there has been very significant paradigm shifts. And also those paradigm shifts have been determined and led by Öcalan himself. And if I may also state another point, PKK terrorist organization and in its establishment, the idea and the ideology of autonomous Kurdistan idea has been also launched. He himself voiced this, he has also established this, and he now is dismantling and he's now eliminating this. So in my personal point of view, he is only there to continue his influence. And this is pragmatic as well. All the other stakeholders and the components, they have also continued to exist under the umbrella of him being the leader. Otherwise, unless otherwise, the components would also lose their influence. So this is quite a pragmatic structure where leader has kept his influence. That's why I believe that he remains as the leader. I believe that he is the only leader, and all the directions given and voiced by him will be listened to. And if the minute he says that the arms will be laid down, then the arms will be laid down. And he has mentioned about the dissolution, and the organization will be dissolved. And as of March 1st, the PKK organization has announced ceasefires. It's only 24 hours after his call for this. There has never been a debate over this. It was announced by him, and now the laying down of the arms will, and then this will be followed by the dissolution. However, how this will be actualized, and the PKK also states a few points as to how this could be achieved. A very important statement has been made, which also underlines the position held by the leader Öcalan. They say that all alone, they say that they cannot continue representing this movement on their own. I think this is one of the leaders, one of the the members of the executive committee. So that's why, if we're going to convene around ourselves, and this and they say that this Congress should be assembled, and this Congress should be also led by Öcalan. Would it be curfew? Would the imprisonment be replaced by curfew? And I think there should be we're expecting some legal demands. We're expecting some kind of demands. So I have 2 minutes left. So what I understand as to how concrete steps are not there yet. However, the executive committee and the other units have stated that they will be following the directions given by Öcalan. However, it has not yet been made clear as to how this will be made in concrete terms. This will take time, and certainly the state will not sit down at a table to negotiate, or there will not be this has been stated by the members of the government. There will not be there is no subject, negotiation is out of the question. So therefore, both from inside and outside, there will be will there be pressures on the government? Maybe then the government will be forced to take some steps at the political and at legal level. Within the organization, there may be some voices raised to oppose. For instance, some of the armaments can be sent to YPG, some can be perhaps hidden and sent to other units. These are possible scenarios. These are all technical details. However, what we understand, what we conclude, is that this will certainly not be achieved overnight. This is nothing to be materialized within 3 to 4 days. However, I think they will be expecting the state or the government, the Turkish government, to take some steps as well. And I'll be happy to answer some of the questions. Thank you so much. I have already compiled some questions, unless our attendees, participants here, ask. I have a list of questions myself. Up until so far, you have stated, but how will be the concrete steps and the responses? what is the new strategy by PKK? And not now, certainly not now, but maybe I would like to, maybe I can answer it. Maybe I can state it as one sentence. The executive committee have said that they will be lending and embarking on a political platform. So that's how the statements, they are not giving up on the struggle. They will be on the political platform. I have my own ideas, which I will be happy to discuss with you and with our participants in the Q&A session. I want to give the floor to our second speaker, Mr. Hüseyin Attekin, and he's the faculty member from National Defense University, and he has a very deep background on this very topic. As I have stated, now we'll go to the regional aspects of it. There's the Iraq, and because certainly it's a regional issue, especially Syria, Iran, and Iraq. And now, in the new Iraq, what does this mean for the Syrian aspect? And this has been also debated. This new era, the main reason is certainly the new era that has been initiated in Syria. So it's due to the steps and the new and recent developments in Syria that has given rise to the PKK's new step. So because of the presence of YPG there and how this is all interwoven, these are the things that we will be listening to from Professor Hüseyin Attekin. How do you see this at the regional aspect, especially from the viewpoint of how all these dynamics are interacting one another in Syria, Iran, and Iraq? Thank you so much. I would like to extend my gratitude to ORSAM, Center for Middle Eastern Studies, for inviting me here, and to all our distinguished speakers. This new era, what does this mean for PKK, for Türkiye? If I may answer these first, just as you have mentioned in Syria, and how will it ripple effect in Syria? We call it as PKK. Certainly, that's this is the root organization. However, within, I believe that there are 4 different groups that are distinct, and one of them is the PKK leadership and Abdullah Öcalan is one of them, and he's in Imralı Island, and for about 25-26 years he's in solitary confinement, and he has his own projections for future. If he could achieve the launch of this new era, there are certain risks and there are certain wins. He's an actor here, so he has his own interests and he's calculating the risks and winning points. And the other second actor is DEM party, DEM political party. That's the political arm of PKK. That's pro-Kurdish political party of DEM, and that's the political party attributing leadership to Abdullah Öcalan. And the third actor is Kandil. And as much as there has been some different ideas, sometimes some of the Cemil, Duran Kalkan, and other names in Kandil are the extension of PKK, and that's the structure of PKK in Kandil. And the fourth actor is PKK's arm in Syria. And here, certainly, there's the PJAK in Iraq and others. But I'd like to first focus on the 4 actors first. But out of these 4, the 3 of them are now becoming different than the interests of Kandil. No, for instance, Abdullah Öcalan has no interest and no common point in Kandil, because the more, for instance, it's been 26 years, he has his own concerns as to whether he could send some messages. Maybe Öcalan had more of maximalist ideas. Maybe in his, as foreseen, he might have visualize himself as the leader of a DEM party. But Abdullah Öcalan has remained cut off from the rest of the world, and the Kandil then emerged as the actual and more prominent, which is against Abdullah Öcalan's interest. Now there is DEM party. DEM party has, and after the elections in Van, Diyarbakır, other than a few municipalities, the DEM was quite successful. And Kandil is asking and some requests from DEM, and then DEM is also caught in the radar of terrorism, and there also some of the representatives of DEM party has been also imprisoned, and some of the DEM representatives in the municipalities have been appointed trustees. So that's also a loss on in DEM party. And in Syria, PYD has never been the winning party either. It's been suffering from loss in Syria as well. In the last year, maybe not even starting as of November, with the election of Trump, and December 8th, the administration in Aleppo and Damascus has been changed. And now the PYD wants to be the actor on its own, but now in Syria, for instance, PYD right now today in Syria, in Damascus, is in search for it has no longer has a supporter in the eastern part of Euphrates River. He has certain patrols, and there was a harmony, and so he was functional. The PYD was functional. However, in Damascus now, PYD is now seeing that the Syrian new government has is on good terms with Turkish government. So this is a loss for PYD, and also categorically, PYD doesn't have Biden or Kamala Harris to categorically support PYD against Turkey. There is no such support, and PYD isn't certainly has no supporter. So now there is the Trump administration, which leaves PYD with no support or with complete unknown. And this is certainly quite new developments. These are all fixed now, but also there are other variables. And Syria and in Afne and Jarablus, from the military point of view, in the northern part of Syria, there is no defense against Turkey. If there is an operation held right after the elimination of Russia out of the equation, Turkey and America, if America and Turkey reaches an agreement, or if America withdraws, then PYD will no longer have any resistance against Turkey, regardless of the amount of the support to be given by America, and just as much as PYD is said to have the number of 80,000 militants, and so they are this leaves them quite weak. And so if a new era is about to begin, if PKK is to dissolve itself, what kind of a view PKK, all these factors, all these four actors are expecting to win something. And these Kandil is then, from the Kandil's point of view, this is a loss. It doesn't quite seem like a winning scenario. And in Haseki, in Europe, from different voices, we have heard the approaches, and we see interpretations of what has been stated by Öcalan. The Syrian wing of the movement says that they're not there. It's about, and then they say that they are supporting the statement. So in a process where PKK dissolve itself, from the PYD's point of view, the success rate by PYD can be even higher, and maybe with this dissolvement, because each time America and the senior or junior representatives of American government, if they is visiting this, and PYD is also asking the question, if we eliminate the baggage of PKK, can we work efficiently with the Americans? If America withdraws completely, what are we going to do, is the question mark. So PYD will definitely be losing the land, because we have seen it in Afrin where the tunnels were made. So there isn't any possibility by PYD to resist. It's a length of 9 to 11 kilometers from Kamışlı to Nusaybin. So there is a path there, and there's a wall now constructed. And the most challenging part was Afrin with the highest altitude. And the highest altitude didn't even take 1 month. It was solved by means of military aspects. And that's why PYD, I believe, will be happy and will be pleased to see PKK to dissolve itself. And PYD will try to keep itself out of all these. And in a statement by Abdullah Öcalan, certainly it's not quite clear. It says all the groups. It doesn't use the word ceasefire, but it says all the groups will dissolve itself, it reads. But maybe it could have including PYD, or maybe the statement could have included the statement saying all groups, including PYD or the other extensions of PKK in Iraq, Syria, and Iran, will dissolve itself. This could have been the case, but it wasn't. And there is the political. So Turkey's approach is certainly fixed. If PKK dissolves itself and lays down arms, we will recognize this. And there have been some attempts in the past 3 times. It has been right after the in 1999, after Öcalan was apprehended, PKK was to be dissolved. This was a process back in 1999. The militants that has withdrawn had continued their operations outside. So PKK unilaterally with the KADEK, and they had, and there was a question asked by PKK whether they could continue in a much more peaceful way. So up until 2004, this was a time, because PKK remained more so silent, up until 2004, Turkey did not also remained silent on that, but there was the Oslo process. This was not unilateral this time, because there was an attack by PKK in 2004. And there is the Oslo process. All these were also on papers. And in between 2007, in Oslo process, and different names were also included. Some of the names in Europe, some of the PKK representatives in Europe were also included. They were all in uniform, and then they have surrendered in some of the operations too. And they were arrested and they were released, and they have, and this was the second process. And there was the resolution process that has also started and continued till 2015. And PKK has used the third process to shift its existence to Syria. There was lack of trust and confidence. And Turkey has also fortified and strengthened itself against PKK. And there is a process. The word process is used by PKK. And before we start this new era and the cross-border operations or the strengthening of the secure lens in Syria and in Iraq, there was the pawn operation and having it in southern geography. And Turkey is continuing to wait, just as what it has done before 27th February. It's continuing. So PKK will then, because in the Congress to be made in April, and we have seen all these in 2002, in 2014, it's in its 11th Congress, and they said that they will convene the Congress and they will have Öcalan will be here to speak. They now claim that Öcalan will be sending a voice message where he can then state that the PKK is dissolved. But this does not mean, these have been repeated earlier. It doesn't mean much when the statements are uttered. And what's really important is that PKK withdraws from Kandil and in Bara regions and to eliminate its armed units in Iraq, whether it's in Peshmerga or whether all these arms are sent to Peshmerga or in to the region in Sinjar to Harkurk or to southern part towards Kandil. They have held them in their hands. If PKK is to dissolve itself, it will only happen on this Peshmerga region is under the control of Turkey, but in Gara region and Sinjar south and up until Kandil in Mahmur can be also included. In these areas, the armed militants should be withdrawing and it should be then surrendered, the area should be surrendered to Erbil government and Baghdad government. Only then a new era can be then actualized. And in the executive committee of the organization, Mustafa Karasu has started laying certain conditions, and it can only happen after benefiting of the article of hope. It could happen. But Sırrı Süreyya Önder of pro-Kurdish DEM party is quite clear. They say that because this is what will be a benefit for them. And Syrian wing says that this all covers and meets PKK, but not ourselves as well. So PKK will then be disarming itself, but will not let go of the other regions, such as Kandil. So then this is nothing new for Turkey. If this continues like this, there may not be much of an outcome for this. And Turkey then will be continuing its operations in those regions because disarmament has not been, then would not have been. And in the pawn operation, we have 11 fallen soldiers. Because it's mountainous, there are caves. The minute you go to those areas, for instance, it's quite challenging area in Kandil geographically. Certainly it would be welcomed. There are many names, but they call him the commander of the CDG, Mazlum Kopani, as he uses his name. His discourse is, he says that this is not of any interest to us. He says we've got nothing to do with this. If they say that if Turkey gives the guarantee that there will not be operations at all, then maybe then PKK could become very authentic establishment in Syria, because there are many militants from CDG, SDG, and the SDG, does not leave the area. Maybe I have run out of my time. It's not acceptable for Turkey because in Damascus we do not have Assad, and now there is another Syrian government, and now they're probability of Trump's withdrawal from Syria is quite high, then why would Turkey freeze a situation like this at this level? We need the PKK to actually withdraw from the areas as well. All these very recent developments in Syria, how would this have an impact on PKK? Because the administration is strengthening itself, solidifying, and all the balances could change. How will the most recent developments in Syria with the government and the new structure in Syria have an impact in PKK? So these are to highlight that, because Mr. Ibrahim Aydin has mentioned that the process and PKK existence is to continue, and their intention is to continue on the political platform. Your words then has emphasized how these steps by PKK are not new. So you say that this is nothing new, and this has repeated itself in the past a number of times. So if we want to see anything different, there have been two ideas here. I'm sure I'd like to emphasize this. My point here is, if this is going to be a really new era, like PKK's Congress, and it's not going to be with the PKK or all these statements, but if we see that the arms are delivered and they are really put down, if they are really laid down, and if they really withdraw themselves from those areas. So your statement, Mr. Ibrahim Aydin, was that PKK was withdrawing itself to the political platform. 47 years of history has proved that the organization is there to heed and to listen to the directions given by the leader, Öcalan. That's why I believe that the organization can possibly be listening. And in their own statement, it reads that they are to continue their existence in the political platform. Another question is, will this be an option for political platform? And you said that military precautions and military measures are standing at a rate of 40 to 47%. You have quoted from literature. Is this a result of the military precautions that PKK is opting for their existence in platform? Now we will be talking about Iran's dimension, PJAK, because Kandil was more prominent in Iraq, but we have PKK in Iran. Also, all the wind of changes in Syria, changes of regime in Syria, how will this impact in Iran's situation and all the other actors? I believe that this was also influential. We have started to see the traces of this, and the Turkish officials have also started criticizing Iran. And this new development in Syria, how has it impacted? We don't know whether there has been a concrete change or impact from Iran. This will be now voiced by our colleague, Mr. Rahim Farzam, from our Center for Iranian Studies expert. He's an expert. Thank you so much. As you have mentioned, Iran dimension is of critical importance. And the other things to be clear, very briefly, if I may, mention about the dynamic of Iran and PKK relations between Iran and PKK. In fact, PKK is quite a operational means, but the motivation for Iran to have a relation with PKK, because PKK is seen as a balancing factor for its establishing its relations with Turkey, and we see how it was emerging in 80s and in 90s. It also evolved because part of Kandil is within Iran's lands, territories. Starting of 2000s, and there was a security-related challenge. There was an expectation. This invasion was to expand till Iran. That's why PKK establishes PJAK. And this creates an issue. After the Arab Spring, PKK-Iran relations, we see an engagement. It becomes more visible. So this is a component. PKK is seen as a tool to balance the relations with Turkey. So Iran's regional interests, then Iran is always ready to play the PKK card, has always been. So if we see a tension-wise region, we start seeing the PKK-related PJAK news. And we see also Iran reaches to YPG because, as you know, in Syria there is this militia, and there certainly all these need to go through PYD. That's why the relation between Iran and PKK is functional. In Iraq, after the clone operation, we have started seeing the news on the media on how Iran was disturbed, and Iran Masjidi, the Iraqi ambassador, has also Iranian ambassadors and the Shiite groups also have seen the clone operation as invasion. In 2020, in Karabakh war, in the Zangezur corridor, both for its national interest and for its land territorial integrity. That's why there were news that PKK was supporting the Armenians in those regions of Azerbaijan. And we see how the news are quite warmed again. So Iran, for instance, Caucasus, in Syria's recent developments with the elimination of Assad, Iran is interpreting all these as steps to narrow down its own influence. Whenever such interpretation is there by Iran, then Iran is always using this play card. So we know PJAK has been established by PKK in the region, and PKK is now then trying to control its movements through PJAK and via PJAK. There's this internal security aspect as well. In fact, PKK is quite a useful card for Iran. And how is this call by Öcalan been interpreted by Iran? with the official statements, we see that it's in the official statements in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Iran has welcomed this, has almost welcomed this, and has been seen as a positive development. The language frame they used was quite. PKK is designated as a terrorist organization. The statements by Iran has been in the direction of being positive. It's been welcomed. However, at the end of the day, clearly speaking, or frankly speaking, if we see some of the authors, some of the academicians, they also raise a few points, some concerns. They have also stated that Iran has certain concerns. All these new era, will this be creating some kind of, it's thought that this could be causing some pressure on Iran, because there are number of armed groups there. Iran is of high number. All these groups, if these groups are then being moved towards Iran, is the concern. And Trump's new term, or Netanyahu's statement that they could also take certain steps, then this becomes even further important. Another point is, if Turkey resolves PKK terrorism, then this may mean that Iran can lose its influence, and Turkey will have a larger or more strengthened regional influence, and this will automatically mean the relative decline in or decrease in Iran's influence in the region. So PJAK is in 2022 event. PJAK has been used for its own propaganda. And so Iran thinks that it's through and via PJAK that it can have a say on PKK. And a third concern, and if PKK is weakened, and even when it is dissolved, then PJAK then could turn into and become more stronger there if it remains there. PJAK has relations with U.S. and it's supported by the U.S. So, and PJAK is to be, if there, for instance, this armed and ethnical so there is a concern that PJAK could be used by PJAK because if PKK is dissolved, then may emerge as an actor. PJAK can emerge as an actor to be supported by U.S. and also they think that Iran thinks that this will not go smooth, and some of the fractions within PKK may not listen and follow the footsteps of this call by Öcalan. And Iran may, I believe that Iran will be in an effort to continue with the other fractions, to continue this existence, and or will continue to use it as a means. Also, do I have time? All right. With regards to Syria, once we see it from an official point of view, the ministry, at the level of Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Syria, certainly statements are there, and quite the diplomatic statements are quite positive. However, also for the regional developments, these are the as we call them, the guide of revolution, Iranian revolution. They believe that the Syrian youth will be the party to save Syria. This has created a psychological effect, certainly. And the security diplomats have also used this and stated this. The Iran's National High Supreme Security Council of they have had some meetings at the end of which there could be some concerns raised. This would be the expectation right after the meeting by the Iran Supreme Security Council. They said that there would be the resistance unit to be established. And right after this, the spokesperson, the Persian news agency, has released the news that this resistance front has been established, so that it was on the news. So Iran's point of view is that maybe all these events may grow futile and void, but even if it may create some sort of instability, it's quite important because Iran to remain on the table is only through these using this as a card. And one of the topics used on Aslana process and the new Damascus process would be continuing between Turkey and Syria. So Iran has been given the news that it was excluded. So Iran thinks that Iran is excluded, and it's not completely convinced that there has been a defeat there. For Iran to become more influential, Iran keeps on emphasizing that nothing has been completed yet. Iran's aim is to have a long-term existence. Even if you may have your term, even if you may have your unit representing you in Syria, this will mean some sort of a card for Iran to play to remain on the table, to remain at the discussions going on and being given a seat at the table. The instability, if it is not tamed, I don't think PYD will be engaged in Syria. After Syria will come Iraq. If Iran is not well represented in Iraq, then this will be a decline on its influence. That's why I believe Iran will be resisting and will try its best to remain at the table. Thank you for your kind views. And Iran, thank you for kindly sharing your views. So this Syria, we have mentioned that Iran is the party to lose, to have lost a few points of influence. And especially regarding the Syrian revolution. And there are some, Israel also stated that there is for instance, they are trying to take the under patronage and the protection of some of the minorities like Jersey. And so there is almost like very ironically, Iran and Israel are saying something parallel. Quite ironically, Iran, I'm sure, I can almost say that I'm sure right after this era, it's almost like, it's almost saying that they were back at the table, so they would like to Khamenei, up until all the statements by Khamenei. The telegram is used actively in Iran. There are some significant claims. So the Iran can be playing as the party to disturb the ongoing process. So Iran is almost adopting the role of a game buzzkill or game buster, game breaker, unless it is included in the game. So between Turkey and Russia, there is a negotiation. Russia has to be supporter of Assad regime, but there are certain negotiations continuing. In fact, Lavrov and there has been a meeting with the Lavrov presence was here. So Russia's position is becoming a little different, and Iran is almost feeling quite out of the table and is certainly not ready to accept being excluded. So these are like claims and like sort of question marks and interpretations. Thank you so much to our speakers, and the title of our panel has been New Era in Turkey, Combat Against Terrorism, War on Terror, Future of PKK, YPG and PJAK. Now we are ready to welcome the questions. I have some questions. I have stated this earlier, and I told earlier that I would be happy to share them. And among our listeners, if there are those who'd like to ask questions, let's allow our guests ask the questions first. Esteemed participants, faculty members, and thank you so much. My name is Bilal Aykaç. My question is to our retired commander. The PKK process and the call by Öcalan to lay down the arms, as you said that it was not even 20 hours that they have been taking the steps. As you know, PKK is almost like is operating on money. Once money or provided, they're ready to commit suicide. And how will this? So it's almost like a company. There's this drug, and there's $1 million of economy with a company of drug trafficking as well. And maybe would these be sufficient for disarmament and dissolution? And this is the handicap, in fact, and because once we use the and we see, for instance, once you say Kurdish Committees Union, CK, PKK, and YPG in PYD, we understand them as a whole. However, there is a effort by PYD to legitimize itself by means of distinguishing itself from PKK, because PKK is registered and is a designated terrorist organization, and to eliminate themselves and to have them separated from PKK, they try to legitimize itself and to stabilize themselves. This call may or, and for instance, the EU groups, the representatives of PKK, there are some, they also say that they're not part of PKK, and therefore they may not listen to this direction of disarmament and dissolution. There are certain gaps there. What is the intention by the other subgroups or the affiliated groups of PKK. And Kandil leg of PKK has not said a word yet. Because not only Kandil is not included in the statement document, but YPG said that it's not included. There are certain gaps and unclear parts of this when the groups, subgroups, or the affiliated groups, whether they're covered or not. Does Turkey perceive this as a call as to include all the affiliated PKK groups then? This call by Mr. Devlet Bahçeli, the leader of MHP, so this statement was made as a result of the speech by Bahçeli. So Bahçeli said earlier that if the organization may stand up to declare that they disarm and with the intention of dissolution, but in the PKK in the written statements and the documents of the Turkish state, anything PKK equals to Kurdish Communities Union, it equals to YPG, and Süreyya Sarık also said that this is binding for all in principle. So the word in principle. So it says, and this Kurdistan Communities Union KCK has been also established by Öcalan. So the security bureaucracy accepts these. So my personal point of view is that all these at the level of government or the state, once we say PKK, all the breakaways, all the other abbreviations, all the YPG and all the others are also included. I'd like to continue with Mr. Nurullah. I can't hear him. I'm sorry, I cannot hear him. Could you ask him to turn on the microphone, please? Kendisinin sesi gelmemekte ve tercüme edilememekte. This process to accept and to the motivation behind accepting this process, we cannot, I personally couldn't quite put a frame, couldn't clarify it in my mind. The laying down of the arms and the motives and have been explained by Mr. Ibrahim, and yourself also stated that PKK and other groups, 3 groups, will be also having having advantage. All these advantages, do these advantages to be gained from by means of them YPG or from the viewpoint of Öcalan? Are these the advantages? Are these advantages then forming the motivation? For instance, what kind of there has not been made any negotiation at first, and what kind of a gain could DEM, a political party, pro-Kurdish political party DEM, what kind of a gain would there be? Right now there are 4 actors. 3 of them are thinking that they could have gains and wins, but this is their perspective. I don't think these have any corresponding meaning for Turkey. Öcalan, probably I've been in prison for 26 years, maybe. If only through the dissolution of PKK, then I could have political platform existence. If PKK tries to continue with the arms, my voice is not heard, is probably his personal thought. And the other PYD and YPG will try to have its own existence in the northern Syria, and they say that we'll try to exist once Turkey stops attacking us. And them is also seeing that Demirtas is in prison, so this will be also positive development for them. But Turkey is quite precocious. Turkey's point of view and perspective is this: okay, PKK will be dissolving itself, then Dara Kandil will need to be given to the, for instance, Peshmerge, or the central government should be then only by means of PKK withdrawing from these geographical areas. Only through this, naturally, the operations will come to an end. But I don't think the operations will come an end in Syria, because there's the territorial focus is there. Just as the, for instance, PKK territorial barbarism continues in Iraq. But so there isn't any motivation for Turkey. Turkey wants, for instance, in Damascus, there is a friendly government. What the Trump would do is quite ambiguous. So Trump could withdraw. So why would Turkey allow PYD to become strong there? Why would Turkey opt for establishing a comfortable time for PYD to contribute to its strengthening and to create problems in the future? And I believe that Turkey will continue its operations in Iraq and in Syria by means of, once Trump leaves the Syrian lands, I think operations may continue. Now I'd like to give the floor to other question, but before that, in the presentation by Ibrahim, Mr. Ibrahim, you have stated that their aim was to continue to exist in political platform. So all these processes here that we have in Turkey, so this shift towards the political platform, but on the other hand, as Mr. Hussein has stated, it's all these behind this declaration, a statement by Öcalan, may stem from the military pressure. So either there is a will for PKK to continue having its voice heard at the political level, or as the personal expectations or Öcalan after 26 years, or is there a strategy in his mind? These are all questions, good questions. In Iraq, maybe it's applied pressure on in Iraq, and the first exit. Do you think this is the solution for them to have the first solution, or the immediate solution? Maybe I can have few words on that. Based on the research made on a total number of almost 500, in fact, actually 468 terrorist organization, these are all data. The data I shared was the percentage of the reasons and the percentages assigned to 4 different reasons. And terrorism is opportunist, and so it has its own dynamics. And in the social atmosphere, if there is a change in the social environment and ambience, they may change its own methodology. This could be one of the reasons. It's almost like a living organism. It is born, it continues living, and then it may be neutralized, or it is. We have seen all the other phases. 100 years of armed struggle, and then you unless you can control 40 meters square, then there is nothing else you can do in the military sphere. So there's a defeat. If there's a defeat in the military sphere, then if it creates a legitimate reason for you to look for new existence areas in the political area. So this is almost like a way out, is what you mean. Thank you. Yes, so there was a question by Mr. Gökhan. It's not only the armed structure that the organization has. Other than the armed structure, it has its own ecosystem. Yes, that's exactly what we meant by means of calling it a firm. Civil, NGO, and economy. Military aspect can be weak, or if the defeat on the military aspect requires a dissolution, then it will lay down its arms and it will continue to exist in other aspects. Thank you so much. The most important issue in my mind is, naturally, this was not mentioned within this panel, but the ideological adventure of the organization and the outcomes of this. There have been two breaking points, and there are ideological, for instance, socialism with the collapse of Soviet Union, and Leslie Gibson democratic thesis has been also used, but has been also left. And communalism, there has been some transitions, and there have been new ideologies. And Bookchin, and there is a stance against the state in terms, it has continued for leadership, and but in the last statement, I had the opportunity to go through the statement. It has repeated its previous criticisms against real socialism, and this is a statement. Is this a new ideological change, or is it creating a new term other than creating a new ideology? So is this a new fracture and a new emergence of a new ideology, do you think? In the Cold World War is the time where PKK their ideological structure is strong, has been strong, because it's coming from the Cold War era. All the ideology, so Öcalan, as the founder of PKK, has also formed the ideology. In fact, if the founder of PKK himself stating and mentioning about this dissolution, then he is also leaving and departing from the ideology. However, in the past, there has been some paradigm shifts. But what he means in his statement, in his last statement, is democratic politics. And in fact, this was mentioned in the follow-up release by Sırrı Süreyya, and democratic politics and its political or its legal results. And there was a response from Kandil to that statement. And what it means, as to what all these means, will become clear. What do they understand from democratic politics? What do they mean? What does this mean, or what does this cover? Is it a regional thing to emerge, or will we see the demand? Will this what the demand is? In my personal point of view, as I have mentioned, in this political, all these probably will wait for some time, and by means of applying some pressure on the government, and maybe they will see into what kind of challenges could be, what kind of opportunities they could have. So this is what they will try to see. Thank you. And certainly they will disarm, but maybe there will be a negotiation to be launched, but Turkey has mentioned that nothing will be subject of launching negotiation. I would like to extend my gratitude to all the panelists for this presentation. From the jargon used by PKK, within the, if I'm not mistaken, PKK within the Kurdish Community Union, what kind of a place PKK has in the hierarchy of the KCK, Kurdish Communities Union? If everything goes smooth, all this dissolution, how functional will this be? My question is, called for 27 February, and there was the response by, the call was made and this was announced right the very next day, 28th of February. The executive committee of PKK has mentioned this, announced this. Now we need to wait for the KCK committee as a response. I think it would be much more meaningful if we wait for a response from Kurdish Communities Union, from the regional and democratic confederalism. In fact, if PKK leader Öcalan saying that democratic republic and democratic politics, in fact, is a message when Öcalan has mentioned about when he was first apprehended. Maybe this is a personal and his own existence, because he has mentioned about the political, democratic political existence when he was first apprehended and when he was almost facing all the possible, in fact, once he was in, I cannot hear the, so this is about the confederation. So it's almost like a state, this is the union, YPG, PYD, these are the Syrian wings, but there's also, you have mentioned about paradigm shifts. Cemal Sever's book is what I have read. He was focusing on the 1990s. And in 90s, in fact, in dating back to 80s, there's the ideologic and due to the Cold War polarization, but then the paradigm was also built on pragmatism. Then we see that PKK is having an agreement with America, with Iran, and with Russia. This is what I have observed. There's a saying, Öcalan is, and pragmatism is there indeed, because Mazlum Abdi said that anyone who would be of support to us, we're ready to meet with them, is what they said. And Öcalan is known as the embodiment of the saying that goes, Öcalan is a person to carry his field wherever there is rain. So it's all the pieces are, all the other subcomponents and all the breakaway units in PKK. There is a political, and we have PYD and YPG in Syria, and they're reporting to the executive committee. As you know, as they have the legislative and they have the executive wing and the council. To the council they report to. So this is a decision. If this is all the statements made on behalf of the council, this is binding for all the components. So it covers them all. But I may be a little of a different view than Mr. Ibrahim. Certainly, PKK, once we speak about PKK, we always consider the political parties, the military. It's almost like PKK we see is as the umbrella structure and as the umbrella name, but it has the cult characteristics and this homogeneity. And I have some doubts about this homogeneity and integration. For instance, it's quite clear that he has not used the word ceasefire, but he has used the word dissolution. And now Kandil will all try to find some ways that they will not dissolve themselves by means of being in agreement. Maybe so. It's almost like Kandili will try to play around. They will try to be in agreement without being in disagreement, without disarming themselves. Maybe if I'm wrong, PYD and all the units are dissolved in April, let's presume that, and they're all going to, perhaps traveling to Norway. I don't know whether PYD would listen to this and heed to this. And as long as we know that PYD has different interests that are different that of Kandili, and maybe behind the doors in America, for instance, maybe there are some discussions, and they're having some discussions on how they could have PYD as a separate unit, as the union, the Kurdish Communities Union, CK. So it's the structure underneath. So all the relations of having a combat against Daesh, and they have different relations with YPG. They have improved their relations with the Western countries, something probably more than what they could ever imagine. They have turned into a larger scale, larger scale of an organization, probably far more bigger than they ever thought. Whether PYD and YPG would conform and would be in agreement with these statements, maybe Öcalan, if he turns this into a personal thing, maybe he can clarify, saying one wing can be left with the approval from Türkiye. So Türkiye's approval. If he says that, probably PYD will try to survive, will choose and opt for survival. There's a principle: unless there is an agreement in all the units, unless there's clarity on each and every one of the points, there is no agreement and there is no clarity. The literature also says that unless all topics are clarified, no topic is clarified. But from the viewpoint of pragmatism, if their perspective is that, all right, let's have PKK dissolved, but let the others continue existing, would Turkey consider this as a means of agreement? No, it wouldn't. And we have used all of our time. If there is a question, maybe we can take the last question, and if we can have the comments and questions by our participants. And this is the end of our panel then. We understand that there isn't any question now. Thank you for your kind participation in our panel, New Era in Turkey's War on Terror, the Future of PKK, YPG and PJAK. We try to answer and try to discuss different geographical and regional aspects of it. And we look forward to seeing you and your kind participation with us. We look forward to seeing you in